Hey everybody, Ed here, and I wanted to walk you through two things. One is, I suppose, a process that I use to figure things out when I just don't know the answer. And also to really discuss with you what's going on with these Google changes. And I suppose, there's a lot for us to think about here in 30DC Inkland about what we do with the challenge this year, what we teach, all sorts of issues running through our head. And I just want to bring you up with the latest in terms of what we have done. So I'm going to show you how I do it, and I'm using a new app here on the iPad, which is called Paper. So I'm just going to, basically the thought experiment that I'm sort of running with myself is what would happen if SEO stopped. Now, I'm interested in thinking through, because I have no idea. I have no idea what Google are up to. I have no inside information. We're not exactly on, best name status. So all I can do is think, well, what happens if the merry-go-round, for some reason, Matt Cutts waved a magic wand and there was no way to manipulate search rankings at all. There was no way for us to get traffic in that fashion. It was like it was never invented. Well, what would we do? And this is the process, I suppose, I use to figure that out. So let's have a look here. So my presentation is what would happen if SEO stopped working. So first thing, and the way I try to do anything, is perform a little bit of a thought experiment. This is how I try to figure things out. As I get older, everything becomes a process. Creativity is very much a process. Probably the biggest change for me in the decade was when I realized that the most creative people on the planet are also the people who have the most lavish, sort of enslavement to process. And when I realized this, it was a real eye-opener, because I thought the most creative people would be the most free and easy and so on, and it's just not the case. Study any particular figure. So step one in all of this is, if you just sit there trying to think deep thoughts in a cafe shop or at your desk or wherever you happen to be, guess what? You're going to get bupkis, because there's no way of making that a process. You'll think, but you'll also get distracted incredibly easily, unless you've had, 9th level Dana keto training or something, or you're a Buddhist 10th level or a 27th level dungeon master. Whatever it happens to be, that's not most people, 99% of people. So as you're thinking, it makes a lot of sense to use pen and paper, or if you happen to be like me, you can use the app Paper on the iPad, because it gives you exactly the same feel as using paper, but you get the extra leverage of, for example, creating a presentation out of it. So when we sit down to analyze these things, what have we got here? There are really just three traffic options. You can buy it. We can use SEO to try and get organic search engine rankings. We do pay for that. That's not free. We trade time, usually, if we're doing it ourselves, or indeed we need to employ team members to do it on any sort of scale. And of course, there's market leadership. So, if you're doing any sort of cold-hearted analysis of what would happen if SEO, big red cross there, is gone, that still leaves us with buying traffic or attracting a tribe and building traffic that way. But also keep in mind the parameters or constraints of this thought experiment. And that the major constraint here is it's for testing. Testing, right? Very, very important. We want to make sure that we know that this is exactly what we're focusing on. And when you think about it, and this is something, again, that is so counterintuitive, believe it or not, we're most creative. We'll come up with our best ideas when we have a series of constraints played upon us or laid upon us. So it's very important. The more constraints you have, the more creative the solution, because if you've got all the choices in the world, you end up making no choice whatsoever. So we're talking about testing. So let's have a look. So let's have a look at the good and bad of market leadership. Obviously, the good is, without a question or a shadow of a doubt, market leadership is fabulous and will give you the strongest traffic, the best qualified traffic, the best converting traffic once you have established it after testing, as I've said here in the brackets. And that means, as a strategy for testing, it becomes really not that useful, because if we look at the bad column, it's slow. I always say allow for a year. It might happen sooner, but personally, I think a year is a good test. I can think of plenty of examples of people who took a year to become newly established in a field. And of course, it's not necessarily targeted either. Market leadership will take you in funny directions that you never ever anticipated when you started out. So, as I've said down the bottom here, it's no good for testing, but I think it's an incredible option if you have your life work, or you are in a business and that is your business. You sell wine and you're a wine grower and that is what you do. You've got everything sunk into that. Then market leadership is a magnificent strategy, crucial strategy, vital strategy. I would argue as much as to say a compulsory strategy for anybody, because it's the strongest traffic. It's the way you keep safe. Whenever the winds blow and whenever the winds change, if you've got a great market, you can turn that change into a massive advantage instead of being buffeted around if you have no market and your previous way of getting traffic just got eliminated. Now, for buying traffic, let's think about it. Good and bad. Bad's very simple. We'll just do it quickly. It's expensive. When I started back in 2004, or 2003 really, traffic was 5 cents a click. That's it, 5 cents a click. It meant for $20 we could run a fabulous test. Okay, we could absolutely figure out what whether a phrase worked or not. It was magnificent. We could even test 30,000 phrases a day at 5 cents and just saw what stuck. But of course, now, fast forward to today, I actually asked on my Facebook page during the week, and the answers seem to be around where I thought, on it, and it's very average. Each thing's different. If you're going after, a super expensive term, like something to do with mortgages or insurance or medical or something, then it'll be, of course, way higher than this. But on average, your average keyword, you probably need to allow somewhere between $200 and $300 to test it, because the traffic will come to you between somewhere roughly on average 20 to 30 cents. Again, roughly and average. Good parts of traffic, of course, it's fast. Look, typically we like to allow 7 days for a pay-per-click test. And the reason for that is that it's nice to see if there are, often there's seasonality in a week. Certain markets tend to have most of their traffic over the weekend, certain during the week, some at the start of the week, some at the end of the week. But it's fast. There's no question it's fast. And pretty much within 7 days, you've got an answer. Of course, the other good thing, if you set it up properly, is you can test conversion immediately, right at the same time. So you can see if that market wants to buy something. And of course, we can make it extremely targeted. I'll come back talk about this at the later on in the presentation. But we can create a very targeted funnel, speaking directly to a very specific target or part of a target. So it makes it very popular there. So it's great, except for the one super negative, which is it's expensive. But let's look a little bit at the true cost of SEO. And this is very rough calculations here, but if you look at a team member costing you, roughly $350 a month, using one service. I've only allowed for one service here. I know many people use multiple services of, say, something like an Article Samurai or an AMA is, around $97. And of course, getting articles written, again, I've probably been a little bit conservative there at $150. So, at best case, you're really budgeting about $600 to create SEO campaigns. And of course, using that type of outfit, we can test 10 phrases approximately every 8 weeks. Some super organized people might stretch that to as much as 20, but the time is not going to change. These days, it seems to take about 8 weeks before you can get that keyword into a position where you can test or at least make a judgment call of whether there's going to be traffic. It may take you months to get it into the first position. And of course, we're assuming this doesn't exist, but I want to put this into your mind, what the true costs are. So if we look at the average pay-per-click test cost, well, it's straight $250 in 7 days, approximately. That's, of course, an average, but that's what it is. So it's very specific. It's done. It's finished. So when you look at this, 10 words, approximately 8 weeks, 2 words takes 1 week each for the same budget, then that is an interesting and fascinating question. And this is something I've been talking with my mentoring students about all week. Would you take 2 absolutely certain tests in a month compared to 10 possible but by no means certain tests in 8 weeks? And again, it never used to be like this. You used to be able to do SEO a lot quicker. And to put this into further context, $500 a month is $1,644 a day, and you get to do it yourself. In other words, you're not managing a person. You're not adding, when we talk about outsourcing and adding team members, we forget that we're also asking you to add to your skill sets, which is that of management and people management and running a team, running a company. Whereas, if you're only running a couple of tests a month at this rate, then of course you can easily do it yourself. And you can create a very specific target market. And this to me is fascinating because, one of the biggest marketing revelations to me this year has been this concept that just as I look around, as I've been saying this to mentoring students during the week, when I grew up, I lived in a small country town. It had 2 TV stations. It had 1 radio station that we could tune into, which wasn't even our local town, and 1 newspaper, which was basically out once a week, and it was probably 12 to 16 pages. That was it, right? That was all I had to contend with growing up. So if something happened on the TV, everybody knew about it. Now, fast forward to today, and the amount of messages and updates and tweets and status updates and likes and things that any person, Joe and Jane Smith, deal with on a day-to-day basis is immense. And our brain is a filtering demon. Like, it does everything it can to filter out everything that is not directly necessary and relevant to what Joe and Jane Smith need to do right at that particular point in time. It even filters out things like, the action of your breathing, because you don't have to think about breathing, you just do it automatically. Well, hopefully you do. So that to me is a very interesting thing. So if you have this control and you have this targeting, see, for me, and I spent some time with Dean Jackson in Orlando in January, and we were talking about this a lot. To me, the only way we can get somebody's attention without spending millions and millions of dollars just going for repetition like pharmaceutical companies and car companies and beer companies and the like. I'm assuming most of you listening to this don't have that sort of budget available. We have to be super smart about where we are targeting. And because there's never been a better opportunity in today's market where we can really tailor a message. We can really think about who specifically are we talking about, who we're specifically talking to. I was speaking to one of my mentoring students in the UK who has an acupuncture clinic, and this was a fascinating story. I'm sure he won't mind me mentioning it. And we were talking about who you would target, and as a way of trying to define how and who you would target, I said, well, give me your 3 best and most successful treatments. And the first 2 were totally, I totally got. The last 2 were not so, the last one, I should say, was just unbelievable. I just couldn't believe it. And I just thought it was fascinating. So the third most likely reason somebody would go to acupuncture is because they've got chronic pain and bluntly they've tried everything else. Now, of course, as we know, that's not a particularly good marketing lesson, right? Not a good one at all. Unfortunately, that doesn't give us a lot to work with. The second one, however, was fantastic, and that was, of course, migraine. People who suffer chronic migraines, I'm having a good day today, are perfect candidates for acupuncture, and acupuncture works really, really well for them. But the number one group, and this I was really surprised at, I bet a lot of you are surprised at, is fertility treatments. That's right, fertility treatment, how to have, having a baby, and using acupuncture to help in that process. And it's really successful at doing it. And I was super surprised by this. But here's the marketing lesson. Even though you'd think marketing for acupuncture, if you're marketing acupuncture in the traditional sense of the word, well, you're marketing that you provide acupuncture services and you suit this, and this market. But can you tell me that a person who is trying to have a baby is looking at exactly the same places as somebody who's trying to solve their chronic migraine problems? They've got completely different wants and needs. They hang out in completely different places. Yes, acupuncture is a common treatment, an excellent treatment for both, but they're completely different. Yet, time after time after time, we try to make our marketing reach both of those markets, and you can't. How much does it cost you to host a web page? Basically nothing. So why not have a completely separate experience, targeted experience, for people who are seeking to have children and are having trouble having children, and using acupuncture as a possible way to help with that process, and another one completely targeted to migraines. Doesn't cost you anything, right? Doesn't cost you anything. And that to me is very much a part of this whole process. So, I think today, when we look at what's going on if SEO stopped, I think this has been a fascinating exercise for me, because it really does remind me of the fact that there are other things that we can do. And as we look at the challenge this year, and as we look at what we're teaching on the edges this year, this has been an absolutely fascinating thought experiment. And I'd love to hear from you and hear from your thoughts. Let us know. Let us know on the forum. Let us know on Twitter. Let us know on the Facebook page. Let us know everywhere, because I would be fascinated to see what you guys think. All right, with that, I will leave you to it. Speak soon.